seats in the back, eh?
1, 2. Okay.
Right. Check. Okay, I'm good.
I don't think you're aware of it, but those are sitting in the back, they have an assignment tonight for you to hand over tomorrow morning. So try and sit in the front. I'm not going to bite too hard. You can come up front. Please. No, Hillary needs to be close by. Hillary, don't go too far, you know.
Mic check. Yeah, I'm good. You. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he puts it on, but I'm always reluctant when the mic is live and I can't control it.
Yeah.
I like to control the mic. Thank you, my friend.
Okay.
All right, we could start. Joel.
No, man, not to my face. They can hear me, man. They can hear me. My voice big. Yeah, man. Please. Yeah. They're going to hear me. Whenever they'll lean into it.
Yeah, thanks. Check, yeah.
All right. A pleasant good afternoon to everyone, to all the youth here this afternoon. Pleasant good afternoon to the guests of CARICOM Secretariat, and a special good afternoon to the Secretary General of CARICOM, Ambassador Erwin LaRoque. As we commence this afternoon meeting, I would like to invite God presence, and I will invite Sabrina Sanderson to lead us in prayer.
Can we stand, please? Heavenly Father, Lord God, we acknowledge your presence here today, O God. Father, Lord God, we thank you, Almighty God, for allowing us, O God, the opportunity, O God, to see a next day that you have created, O God. Father, Lord God, we thank you, Almighty God, for life, for health, for strength, O God. We thank you, Almighty God, that we, O Almighty God, as youth, O God, we are able, O Almighty God, to have the strength, the courage, the intelligence, and the wisdom, O God, to come forward, O Almighty God, and act, O Almighty God, as ambassadors, O God, as persons who care, O God, for ourselves and for our country's future, O God. Father, Lord God, we thank you, O God, for your genuine mercies, O God, that you have bestowed upon us, O God, that we were able to come here, O Almighty God, accident and incident free, O God. Father, Lord God, we just ask, O Almighty God, that you will continue, O God, to guide and protect us, O God. We ask, O God, that whatever it is that will be discussed here, O God, that knowledge and opinions, O Almighty God, that it will be discussed in a manner of respect, O God. It will be discussed, O Almighty God, that not only be discussed, O God, but it will have end results, O God, and our words, O God, will be put into use and action, O God, and people can see, O God, that we are really and truly the youths of the future, which is today. In your name we pray. Amen.
Hail, Grenada, land of ours, we pledge ourselves to thee. Heads, hearts, and hands in unity to reach our destiny. Ever conscious of God, being proud of our heritage, may we with faith and courage aspire, build, advance, as one people, one family. God bless our nation.
I will now invite Ambassador Amanda Scott to make her welcome remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Cadets. Secretary General of the CARICOM Secretariat, Ambassador Irvin LaRue, can we met him? Quite fatally, right? Assistant Secretary General, executive members of CARICOM Secretariat, other distinguished guests, the media, our fellow Grenadian and regional youth participants, welcome and thank you so much for joining us in this social media interaction. So it is my pleasure to welcome you to this interactive, informal, yet important development dialogue, just at the dawn of Grenada's hosting of the heads of government convening to design development frameworks for the region. Shadowing the theme for this afternoon discussion, education and agriculture, the future of CARICOM. The CARICOM Youth Ambassadors Program is the community's flagship youth program for regional integration at the national and regional level. Over the years, the CARICOM Youth Ambassadors has immensely assisted in integrating the views and perspectives of young people from across the region into national, regional, and international policies and programs through various engagements such as these, like this social media interaction. It is a clear indication of the SG's commitment to integrating youth voice into regional and national developmental strategies. So in this context, the CARICOM Youth Ambassadors Program, in collaboration with the Secretary General, now presents to you Ask SG 473. We are a hashtag generation, and we always use hashtags. So we're going to relay our concerns regarding Grenadian youths and our fellow regional youths, and we're going to most specifically focus on education, agriculture, CSME, and anything in the realms of CARICOM. We're going to ask our SG some answerable questions, not too answerable questions. Right. So, just some brief housekeeping matters. For our fellow youth who's watching online, you're going to send your questions, hashtag AskSG473. So with that, I now declare the opening of today's social media interaction.
All right. As Amanda outlined, the theme for this proceedings is education and agriculture, the future of CARICOM. I just want to state that the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which outlines that goal number 2, which is zero hunger, is also keeping with why we want to discuss why agriculture is such an important subject matter today. And goal number 4, which is quality education, is also important because, as we are aware, the CARICOM region, knowledge is important for small island developing state because we want to know how we can use our small size and the limited resources, how we can use that to further enhance and develop ourselves and our region. So I will now want to invite the SG to make some brief remarks, and then we will move on to the questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador Jude Cadet and Ambassador Amanda Scott, and to you, the youth of Grenada, and to youth of the Caribbean community, as well as youth on the diaspora. I know that we have many of our young persons in the diaspora who would also check in on this. Let me say once again, it's a very great pleasure to be here with you this evening. This event is your event. It's your event. It's your chance to interact with me, ask me whatever you would wish to ask me. I'll try my best to answer. I've brought along some reinforcements by the way of Assistant Secretary General Dr. Dr. Slater. He's the Assistant Secretary General for Human and Social Development, which also covers youth and, among other things, and education, health, etc. And to my left is Assistant Secretary General Joseph Cox, who is the ASG for Trade and Economic Integration, of course, including the CSME, and your very own Dr. Hilary Brown, our Program Manager for Community Development, which includes youth. I know many of you would have know Hilary from a long time ago. So it's a great pleasure, as I say, to be here. This has become almost an annual event. Whenever we have a heads of government meeting, I start off by first meeting youth in small rooms, sometimes 4 or 5 only, and whoever would come. I think I met once 3 in a room, and it has grown. The CYA, you also encouraged that we broaden it out to social interactive, and I certainly agree with this. And now we're reaching thousands of youth in this interaction, and we do get lots of questions, and we try our best to answer the questions. Even though time runs out, you will have, of course, all the questions there, and we try to answer them even after the meeting is over. We'll try and post them online so that we could do so. Grenada, 1989. This brings back some tremendous memories for me. Believe it or not, I was at this meeting in 1989 of CARICOM. If you have to start the quote-unquote modern history of CARICOM, you need to start with the Grenada Declaration, where our heads of government at that time, downstairs, in considering the global challenges that we were facing at that point in time, the end of preferences, declining aid to our region, decided that we had to deepen our integration arrangements. And the idea to create a single market economy was spawned right here in St. George, in Grenada. And hence the Grenada Declaration was adopted. So I was, of course, perhaps your age when I was here at that time, maybe a little older than some of you, but it tells you how long I've been in the CARICOM circuit. I think if you allow me, Amanda and Judah, I'll probably just give you a very, very brief preview of what we're going to be doing over the next 2 days. So you can get a sense of the breadth of the discussions that will be held here. Of course, you will ask questions on anything else, as I said, that you wish. There are a number of items on the agenda, but if I try to look at them, there's a common thread, there's a theme, and the economy is going to feature very prominently in the discussions by way of taking stock again of the CSME, where we are, how we continue to move along. We'll be looking at issues like financing for development. We're going to be looking at the human resource development strategy, which is in keeping with what you will be asking questions about. We'll be looking at health, very important, in particular non-communicable diseases. And I want to ask you, as I did when I addressed the workshop of the CYAs in Georgetown last month, I want you to be advocates and ambassadors for our continued fight against NCDs. It's taking a toll on our families, on ourselves as individuals, and there's much we can do by changing our lifestyle to address that. And forgive me for putting it in this way, but myself having trained a little bit in economics, I can't help but observe the cost of NCDs to our economies. A recent study of one of our member states indicated that it could be as much as 5% of GDP, and that is very, very significant. So I say this to encourage you to help us as we look at that. Air transportation is another issue on the agenda, all in keeping with our efforts of advancing our integration arrangements. We know we cannot move around, we can't ship our stuff unless we have affordable air transportation. A lot of work has gone into creating what we are calling a new multilateral air services agreement that should allow for greater airlift among CARICOM-owned smaller airlines into and out of our region. We also will be addressing a facilitation of travel. I know sometimes it's a hassle traveling in our region. It's cheaper, perhaps, for some of you to travel to Miami than it is to travel to some of the CARICOM countries, and this is some of the things that we have to address. Tourism, we'll be looking at tourism within that broader context. So I just thought I would touch on a few of the issues, and there are many more, and as the questions come out, I will point to some of those other areas that we will be dealing with. You have chosen education, human resource development, and agriculture as your two themes. And you may know that in 2005, in looking at the state of education of human resource development in our community, our heads, upon receiving a presentation by a group of experts we put together, recognized that there was need for some change. There was need to addressing our education system. There was a need for making it more responsive to the needs and creating persons ready for the 21st century, to make them more employable and have the appropriate skills, looking at issues such as the balance between academics and vocational skills and the like. And the heads recognized as well that there was some quote-unquote wastage in the system, in that a lot of resources were going into education, but sometimes the results were not what we exactly want. We all know that the results of CXC, as an example, as it relates to particularly math and English, is poor, to put it quite bluntly. And I am not one of those that always say the kids are doing bad, because you go to school and teachers teach you, and if it's a two-way street, and teachers have a responsibility as well in all of this. So teacher education is a critical issue for us as well, and how do you teach? I was once talking to a young teacher, and she said to me that we are teaching digital children in analog. We're still using a chalkboard and a blackboard and chalk to teach kids who are thinking digitally. Everybody has their cell phone, everybody's doing things online. Yet some of us are still stuck doing this. And I think, well, many of you would have heard that throughout the region, our governments are trying to advance that, and ICT is an important issue for us. It will be discussed at this agenda as well. How do we make broadband more available and affordable as a means, not only in education, but as a means of earning a living as well. You are creative people, you are talented, and you innovate. Very often innovation comes from youth. So it's also a very important thing. This human resource development strategy will be put forward to the heads for adoption. The commission that looked at it also had a youth representative on it, at least one, maybe more, Dr. Slater. There was one youth representative, I believe, as well as representative from experts in education and skills training, experts in IT, representatives of the private sector and labor, so that we looked at how we address the education system. Another indicator that we're looking at is the enrollment of our graduates from high school into college. We are low by international standards, even by hemispheric standards, if you look at Latin America. And we need to see how we improve on that. And the employability of young persons when they graduate from high school or further afield. So that's a big area for us, and we will be having a presentation on it, and the heads will and I'm going to assume that they're going to adopt. I think we are so sure that they're going to adopt it that we started working on the implementation plan already, and consultations on implementing the plan. One was held a couple of weeks ago in Georgetown, in Guyana, at the CARICOM headquarters. So we feel confident. Now, this plan is to be implemented over a period to 2030. At 2030, hopefully we'll have arrived at a situation where our education system is changed. You're also looking at agriculture. I believe that's the other aspect of the theme for discussion this evening. And it's a fact that the agriculture population is aging. We are not attracting enough young people into agriculture. The image of agriculture, I think we have to change. I remember some years ago when you saw something about bananas or whatever it is, maybe nutmeg here, you see an old gentleman without shoes on his foot and a pants that's probably torn up and a cutlass in his hand. And we've moved away from, or we're moving away from that kind of agriculture to intense agriculture, agroponics, hydroponics, and we have young people who are actually applying the science of agriculture to their production. I met a young lady from Barbados, it was. At the time she was in her early 30s, and she had a small farm, a couple acres, 1 or 2 acres, I think it was. and she was applying what she learned in getting a very productive farm, and she was using, she informed me, technology to get her production up and going. And agriculture is not only about planting, it's about a number of services that are ancillary to agriculture, whether it's by way of the actual agronomy of growing, whether it's by way of marketing, whether it's by way of extension services. There's a whole range of issues. And the challenge is, how do we bring in the technology into agriculture so that we can be more productive on a given piece of production base, whether it's an acre of land or hydroponics or the like. So we recognize that the population of youth, the agricultural population is aging, and we have been paying attention to that. Last year, in conjunction with the Food and Agriculture Organization and the Inter-American AICA, Inter-American Cooperation in Agriculture, we had a workshop for about 25 youth in agriculture to encourage persons going in that. And we did, I think, what we are referring to a hybrid SIBO. And a hybrid SIBO. SIBO, some of you may know, is a project that we have been spearheading called Creativity for Employment and Business Opportunity, and it's geared at youth. So we work with you in developing business ideas going forward, and that was done. And we continue to do these SIBO workshops throughout a number of our member states. But there was this particular part of the workshop that focused on agriculture. And for the first time, and the persons who took part in that program were able to exhibit their goods at the Caribbean Week of Agriculture in the Cayman Islands last October, and I attended that. And I was amazed to see what it is that we're producing, what our young people are producing in the region, not just in planting, but in agribusiness as well, the byproducts or the downstream products using an agriculture base. And very, very impressive activity. So that's by way of my introductory remarks. I want to hear from you. I want to hear your questions. I want to hear your ideas as well. I want you to tell me what you think we're doing well and what you think we're doing not so well. And I hope at the end of the day I can convince all of you to be part of this journey, this exciting journey that you're taking to integrate our community. So my colleague ambassadors, with these few remarks, I turn over to you and to the audience to fire away.
Right. So as I said, we're going to fire away with questions. So the floor is now open for questions. Remember the theme, education and agriculture, the future of CARICOM. Amanda, do you have any questions from online?
Yes, so this is a social media interaction. The reason why my head is down is because I'm stuck to Facebook and Twitter. Now we have questions from Dominica.
Dominica.
We're going to start with Dominica.
Hello, Dominica.
And it's regarding agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
What policy mechanism would you suggest to ensure and promote land tenure security, especially among family and small-scale agripreneurs?
Mm-hmm. Land tenure it's an issue that is handled at the national level. It's not an issue that we are looking at within the context of CARICOM integration. It's an important issue. We know that there are a number of persons who own lands that don't necessarily have title to lands, and the question arises: what can be done to allow for you to be titled to your lands? Because it's important to have title, since you then use that, of course, to raise the capital for production. I am very much aware that a number of countries, our member states, if not all of them, do have policies in place in assisting persons to be tenured on their lands. I hear sometimes that the cost of transferring titles can be a bit high. It's something that needs to be looked at. Sometimes death dues factor in, and the division of lands into small and smaller pieces that become almost somewhat unproductive under traditional forms of agriculture. That is my response to that question, because it's not something that we are actively working on as an integration arrangement, but we do recognize in the agriculture policy of the community that land tenure is an issue that needs to be addressed. We do have an agriculture policy for the community, and we do recognize it's something that needs to be addressed.
Thank you very much, SG. Another question regarding agriculture, and it's from Dominique again. What successful, cost-effective methods practiced in industrial agriculture would you encourage smallholder agripreneurs to model to increase productivity and income?
Well, these questions are coming hard at me. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know if I can answer all of those questions because I'm here to talk about integration and CARICOM and whatnot. I think we have to look at modernizing our agricultural production practices, if I may say so. I think we have to look to more intense agricultural practices so you get higher yields from a given source, the usual measurement we use as an acre of land, but in intense agriculture, where you use greenhouses, and I'm aware that many persons are moving to greenhouses. 20, 30 years ago, greenhouses were almost non-existent in our region. It was introduced by way of growing things like cut flowers. Now we're doing all kinds of vegetables. And crops that were once seasonal, the production year-round, you get higher yields in some instances by virtue of this, what is called intense agriculture. I've spoken to some young farmers, and when they tell me what the yield is on a greenhouse, and a greenhouse sometimes is not what you may think you see on the television, sometimes a very simple, net shaded operation. I've seen them in various countries, and the yield per acre as well as the monetary yield, you may find surprising if you were to do the cost and benefit analysis of it. So whether it's by way of that sort of intense agriculture or using great agriculture practices, I would encourage that. I'm afraid I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a little bit out of my depth in those questions because I am not an agriculturist, but I'm trying my best to answer based on my observations moving around the region.
Thank you for your honest response, SG. Now we now direct questions to our in-house audience.
Don't ask all at once now.
Shakim and Joel, young farmers.
You probably can teach me a thing or two if we have young farmers among us.
We have a young manufacturer and a young farmer. Any question on education?
I think you have a question.
Yeah, there's a mic there.
Good afternoon.
I have a question. With regards to education, particularly CVQ, CARICOM vocational qualification. And speaking from experience, when I think CARICOM decided to implement the CVQ and decided to establish CANTA, I don't think that you guys really thought that it would grow so much as it has grown. In Grenada, we recently started a program, well, not recently, in 2013, that seeks to give almost 3,000 young people CVQs, recognizing the benefits of a CVQ to travel within the region to seek employment. And the head of this, or the certifying body of the CVQ is located in Jamaica, correct? CANTA. And I think that the whole CVQ process has outgrown CANTA. For example, in Grenada, it would take almost 18 months to 24 months to get back a CVQ certificate. This is proven to be a problem. So I want to suggest that at some point that we look to probably establishing zones with regards to CANTA. So probably have a south zone and a north zone or an east zone that deals with certifying persons. I'm guessing that it's tight for CANTA. You have one body who have to certify thousands of CVQ applications from across the region. As I said, this is proven to be worrisome for us. We have almost 1,000 persons in Grenada waiting for the CVQ certificates. It's been almost 18 to 24 months, as I said. So with regards to vocational competency certification, you really need to look at CANTA as a body and probably stretching out CANTA, not just in Jamaica, but moving it throughout the region.
Okay, thanks for that observation. But I will say to you, when we started with the CVQ, at the time there were only 2 institutions in the region that were certified to issue, I think it was the Heart Trust, was it? and there was one in Trinidad. We always recognize that the other countries who did not have would be at a disadvantage. And one of the things that we worked towards was to have certifying bodies, or we should be still working towards, if we have not achieved it yet, certifying bodies in all of our member states, so that one does not have to go to Jamaica to do so. And I think there's a system in place for allowing for that to happen. I am also aware that there has been some discussion at the level of CXC, if I'm not mistaken, that would also, in some instances, be able to be part of that arrangement. So I'm not sure if Grenada have also ever thought about getting themselves, whatever body you have here, a body here, certified to be able to certify students for CVQ. That is the answer. If we don't have any such certifying body in Grenada, I will say to you that we will wish to work with you in that regard, to get you up to max so that you don't have to go to Jamaica and wait 18 months. That's unacceptable. And I suspect if Jamaica is getting that many requests, then they'll be inundated throughout the region. But so that was the rollout. It was to start with the Heart Trust and the one in Trinidad and Tobago, but to allow for each member state to be able to certify themselves eventually. So we have to certify the certifiers.
Okay, so just to be clear, the National Trade Agency can become a certified body.
Yeah. And I think right now there should be about 4 or 5 certifying bodies throughout the region already, and the aim is to get all member states to be able to certify for CVQs, because it's also a useful tool for your domestic arrangements. Yes, as you mentioned about free movement, but it's also because, how do you know if you're engaging an electrician or somebody that in fact that person has reached a certain standard, and the CVQ is patterned again, as you would well know, industry standards and standards set by the private sector. It's demand driven in that sense. So it sets a standard across the community that also serve the domestic market as well. So I would encourage as many persons who would need to do that to advance to do so. And as again, we'll be willing to work with those member states who are not certified or don't have a certifying body to get us to have a certifying body to be so designated. But thanks for the question.
Any further questions? Sure is. Oh, there's someone. Ladies first.
Good afternoon. My name is Sharice, and I'm a student at the University of the West Indies Cavell campus. And my question today deals with accessibility to regional higher education systems. Now, I attend Cavell, right? And before, years ago, each campus at UE was known for something. So if you want to go engineering, your first choice is Trinidad. You want to do law and these things, you go to Cavell, and then you want to do business, you head to Mona. But now we see that all the campuses are beginning to offer every single program. So now, really and truly, choosing a campus boils down to dollars and cents. Where would it be more cheaper? And to me, that decision, having every campus offer not everybody, not offering everything, but expanding their program, it's kind of taken away from what UE is supposed to stand for. So now, for example, in law, before you had to go to Barbados to get your LLB, and then you would go to your zoned law school. But now Trinidad is offering law, and speaking to my Trinidadian friends in Barbados, they're only at Barbados because they didn't get into Trinidad, or they stopped the Jamaica program. So now we don't have Jamaicans at Cavell. And one of the things that the CARICOM is seeking to do the main thing is to get an education, but then, through UE, you get a nice integration feel. You get, right now, I know what it is to live in every single Caribbean island. So I want to know what CARICOM is doing to try to, bring back that sort of diversity to the UE campuses, because now it's becoming very mainstream, and the first campus that will go under is Barbados, because it's cheaper to live in Trinidad, it's cheaper to live in Jamaica. So now these decisions are kind of forced in, and then Barbadians have to pay for their education now. So once that was implemented, half the population gone. Trinidad is not offering GATE anymore, or they revisited their GATE model. So then I know next year I'm not going to see as much Trinidadians as I'm accustomed to seeing. So I want to know what CARICOM is doing to ensure that UE doesn't become so much of a not as diverse, because our diversity is really one of the best things we have going for us, and it really enhances our educational experience. So what is CARICOM doing? That's my
Very, very interesting question. There's no doubt. You have a follow-up question, or you want to have a seat? It's up to you. There's no doubt that in its early stages, the experience that you mentioned, that UE played a very important role in not only in providing education, but in providing an integration experience. As you mentioned, persons went to different campuses to study different things. Dr. Slater, you went to Jamaica, Gaville, and Mona. And as you said, you went to but I think over the years it has changed, and there are varying factors that contribute. It happened over time. There are various factors that contributed to that. The demand for education has increased to some extent over the years. The demand from the domestic population not being able to travel sometimes to other campuses because the cost of living overseas, versus the fact that where the campus territories may be offering, in some instances, you mentioned the program in Trinidad and Tobago, and the economic costs in some of the countries are being covered by the government. So the demands grew. You also saw at the same time the emergence of state colleges in a number of our countries to assist in filling that void. T.A. Marishaw is also a well-recognized institution throughout our region, and not to mention St. George's Regional Offshore School. But so the whole education, the tertiary education system, in fact, has changed over the years, and we've lost some of that integrating factor. It's something that we do lament. The university is currently considering setting up centers of excellence. There still are specialized faculties throughout, and to this day you still think about doing engineering in Trinidad and Tobago, and you still think about the agriculture program in Trinidad and Tobago and so on, although it's offered elsewhere. But the University of West Indies is spearheading a system of centers of excellence. This is one of the things that the Vice Chancellor will be raising when he comes here this week, that it will not only be for UE, but to bring the other universities on board. There's also some discussion among the universities. They have an arrangement among themselves where they meet regularly and address certain issues about harmonizing curricula as well, so that the transferability of courses or the results of your work at one is easier, and so on. So, but our member states are facing a difficult challenge. So the financing of education is something that I know it's a problem for the students going, but at the same time, given the financial crisis, the financial difficulties and the economic difficulties we are having throughout the community, and I don't think any member state has been spared, not one, it's becoming increasingly difficult to finance. A number of countries have introduced student loans. That, of course, has to be paid back. It becomes a burden. And if you are not employed or you don't create your own work, then you have a problem there. I don't know that what is the answer for that. As I said, more and more are looking at innovative financing arrangements for the students. But I'm hoping that with the centers of excellence, if they do emerge, I'm confident it will emerge at some point, it will at least bring us back a little bit to that integrating force. And it will introduce, for instance, you have universities in Suriname, you have universities in Haiti, a university in Haiti, that one could also have an experience there, and an exchange of students as well, and cultures in our community. So it's something that will be discussed in the coming days.
All right, so we realized we had someone from the back that had a question.
Yes.
Yeah. Pleasant good afternoon to everyone. Mm-hmm. My name is Darlan Douglas, and I'm a farmer, a young farmer. I have a few questions, and some of them came from basically my experience and challenges within the farming fraternity. First, I would like to ask, how do you, CARICOM is going to convince young people to get and to remain in agriculture? Because you're talking education, and a lot of us from a very young age, we have been educated in the schools agriculture-wise. There's agriculture in the curriculum. But then most of us, when we reach finish secondary and we choosing careers, a lot of people divert, because most people who remain is because they know what benefits it has in terms of economic benefits. But then what CARICOM is doing to convince youths to stay in agriculture? Because, I mean, there are a lot of challenges for youths in terms of being motivated to stay within agriculture, because it costs also for you to be a farmer. You must get financial support, and which is very difficult. Some of us don't have the starting capital and stuff, lending institutions, those problematic issues. And then even the accessibility to farm machinery, modern farm machinery and equipments, in terms of training for young people in the technical aspects of agriculture, irrigation, operating plows and stuff. CARICOM can maybe arrange a body whereby, okay, if a young person wants to learn to operate a tractor or plow, he can go to a country whereby they have that available, just as it has, you can go and study agronomy or whatever, wherever. Because, I mean, that question, I was forced to ask that because recently I was contacted by a farmer, a large-scale farmer from St. Kitts, and he actually he gives young youths within the Caribbean region opportunity to come on his farm, and he was seeking a particular set of youths which maybe could operate tractors and stuff to assist him on his farm, and I'm still searching for him. Because
you're searching for him?
Yeah.
For the farmer?
No, I'm still searching for youths.
Oh, for youth on his behalf. I understand.
On his behalf.
I understand.
Then does CARICOM do feasibility studies, for example?
Is that me? Oh, there's a big plug, a big box underneath there. Oh boy. Sorry, that was me.
Is it off? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, in the Caribbean, I mean, we have just two seasons, the wet and the dry season. But there are higher regions with higher altitude where maybe we can look at exotic fruits which we don't have to import from abroad and stuff. Mm-hmm. So in that light, is CARICOM looking into that feasibility study, or where we can grow a lot of exotics here and stuff?
Okay, you've raised a number of questions. Let me deal with the issue. As I mentioned to you, we have had, only last year, we had this program with youth. Not as many as you would have liked to. We started, I think, with 25, to demonstrate that getting into agriculture can be a profitable and rewarding business. Now, when you do those exercises, it costs money to do those workshops and whatnot. And we are always looking for resources. That's why I mentioned we had partnered with the Food and Agriculture Organization and AICA, and sometimes with CARDI in getting some of those things done. But really and truly speaking, I'll be honest with you, the resources are not available to us at CARICOM to do things like the feasibility study and the continuous training. We are better able to mobilize resources then through this institution at the national level to try to get some of those things done. You'll be surprised to know that the agriculture unit in the CARICOM Secretariat, there are 2 people there. 2. When we partner with the youth department to get it done, we have 3, and if I split Dr. Brown into 2 or 3 parts, then you have maybe 3.5 people getting this done. So what we do basically is we work with member states and these international organizations or regional organizations are the ones that assist in delivering on those exercises. So we do not do feasibility studies on production of a particular crop, but we do that. I am very much aware in several, if not all, our member states, that there are such programs there. And some of those programs, as I said before, through the national programs that they have with the FAO and so on, has that for delivery. But we do not do that kind of work. We just don't have the resources to get it done.
All right.
A question?
I have a question from Andre, CARICOM Youth Ambassador from St. Vincent. He said, ask SG, does the recent HRD plan of CARICOM take into account development of persons in the agriculture sector? If so, how?
The short answer is the plan will allow for the development of skills in a range of areas for which there is a demand. There is going to be a continued demand for skills in agriculture. I mentioned that it is not just, don't think of agriculture strictly in terms of the growing and the planting and the harvesting. Our colleague here mentioned operating farm equipment, which is an area, frankly, it is good to hear that people are thinking about that because we don't have too many persons in that area. So it would be responsive to the demands and the needs. And the short answer is that it will be looking at some of those issues. Now, again, I want to repeat that this is going to be implemented at the national level. The CARICOM Secretariat is not going to implement the HRD strategy. It is a strategy for the region and for the member states to use as a guide to implement at the national level as they go forward.
All right. Amanda, any more questions?
Yes, in that same vein of member states implementing the HRD strategy, I have a question from Chelsea from St. Vincent, that is the female CARICOM Youth Ambassador. Thank you for joining us. The question is, how well do member state policies support or limit the implementation of the HRD strategy?
How do member states' policies
support or limit the implementation of the HRD strategy?
Well, the member states are involved themselves as part of the input of the whole development of the HRD strategy. I can't imagine that member states are going to hinder. The workshop that we had in Georgetown, in Guyana, at the headquarters last month involved every single member state being present, as well as other stakeholders. And from my own limited knowledge and interaction with these persons, they're keen to see the new strategy being implemented, and the implementation plan would be tailored for specific national use as we go along. So I am not aware, I can't even imagine that it is going to be a member state would hinder the implementation of a strategy that they themselves have called for.
So from just a follow-up question, from the CARICOM Secretariat position, what mechanism are in place to ensure that some member states, therefore youth, are not left behind after that this strategy is implemented?
Well, the strategy is going to have a series of implementation plans between now and 2030. You keep rolling a cycle of 2- and 3-year plans going forward. The Council for Human and Social Development on Education will have the responsibility for the oversight of the targets. We're going to be putting in place targets. There'll be a monitoring and evaluation system to ensure that targets are met, and if they're not met, why and what corrective action will be taken. And the targets, just about anything that we do now, we have to be able to identify the results that we're going to have, and we have to show results. We cannot just do these strategies and these policies and put them on the shelf. We can't. So the Council, Ministers of Education, basically, and the Chief Education Officers, as they meet, and they do meet annually as CARICOM, will be looking at the strategy and the implementation goals and monitoring and evaluation and making adjustments as necessary as we go along.
All right, Mr. Buck, I realize you have a question.
My question is, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
To one and all. It's a pleasure to be here. My question really focuses on what invites young people really to get into agriculture. I am a young man and I am in agriculture and I love agriculture. That is my passion. That is what I enjoy doing. But at the end of the day, if we look at our forefathers and we look at our foreparents in agriculture throughout the years coming up, it looks like agriculture has been a poverty-stricken profession. And I am here in agriculture not because there is the big gain that I could generate from it, but because it's something that I love. But how do you encourage another young person to tell them that agriculture is one of the ways that they could go into and make a livelihood or sustain their family? And I cannot speak for all the Caribbean countries on farming, but I could speak in our region here in Grenada and say that initiatives have been put in place for farming, but really and truly, how much of them have we seen come on stream to see farming go to the next level? I say that to say we farm, yes. Like, for instance, I specialize in growing seasoning peppers. I grow it on a very large scale, whereas I could reap up to 1,500 pounds of seasoning pepper for a week. At the end of the day, most of the initiative that I am seeing for farming is going to cocoa or banana or nutmegs or etc. But most of the young people that farm, we do not farm on lands that is our own. So how do you ask me as a young man to get into cocoa or nutmeg or so on and so forth? And the land that I farm is not mine, and getting accessibility to own the land is not as easy as it will seem. So what is being put in place that the cash crop youth farmers, those who are planting short crops on that capacity, that scale, what is being put in place to see the distribution of those goods throughout the region? That is my question.
Well, again, you've raised a number. In that question, there are several questions in there. As you say, there are people who go into farming because it's a passion. But I believe more and more persons will go into farming because it's a means of earning a living. If we can demonstrate that the crop that you are producing, or if you're in livestock, the livestock or the ruminants that you're producing can bear profit, and we can demonstrate that, it will encourage persons to go. Now, farming is from and one has to approach it in my view from a business standpoint. You have to approach it as a business and not other than a business, to put it other, because there's some people who farm who are still engaged in subsistence farming. I think we have to focus on farming as a business and to make a profit and to earn a living. And that would encourage persons to go in there. Now, like any business that you go into, you need your capital, and you need the tools of trade. You need your capital investment. If you're doing something to produce something else, like I can't think of a good example, but I know that there's some persons who produce. I saw some beautiful hand soaps being done here and other things like that. If you're doing that, you need tools, you need capital equipment, these are investments, and land is part of that capital investment. Land, unless you're fortunate to have land handed down to you, land is not going to be made available to you. It's just not. The persons who have the land because they see it has value in it. But land is not just, I am not aware that there is land available to just be distributed to persons and say, go and farm. But if you're fortunate enough to have access to land, to family land, or if in some instances the government is selling crown land, and I would hope that they would make the financing available. I do know, again, in some of the countries with development banks, that kind of financing is available at subsidized interest rates, 4% and 5% interest rates in some countries. Other countries is much higher because of the source of the financing that encourage persons to do so. Now, when it comes to selling your produce, obviously, and if you approach it like a business person, and the way you speak, I get a sense you are doing precisely that, because you know your yield per week, and obviously you have your market, and we all know that seasoning pepper is in great demand throughout the region. Peppers on a whole, a crop that, or a series of crops that I know that CARI, through their own extension officers, have been assisting the propagation of planting material, seeds for seasoning peppers, is something that I know CARI has been doing in almost all of our member states. Now, when you produce, obviously you will start to look, if you have not yet done so, to start to look for the export market. And that is where I think the work that we're doing in relation to making the entry requirements into another CARICOM member state for the exports of agricultural produce is very important. We don't want to see that when you have produced your product, that it can't enter into another member state because of some SPS or sanitary and phytosanitary standard that is preventing it from coming in. These things have to be transparent. They have to be known up front. Obviously, you have to comply with them because you do not want to spread any disease. But what we are working on in CARICOM is to ensure that those transparent systems and harmonized systems eventually are put in place. So the market entry for a particular product into one CARICOM country would be the same, more or less, into another CARICOM country. And on transportation is another issue that we have to work on, that you need transportation that is, because a significant part of the cost of delivering any goods to the market is transportation. And we do know that our freight rates are among the highest you can come across. To the extent that transportation can be, some of these products can be shipped by air. I mentioned that's something that we're looking at in terms of allowing for more smaller airlines to work. But the issue of shipping, maritime transportation is also something we have to encourage the shippers. We have been working with small ship owners to have the proper type of equipment on board so that they don't bake your goods in the hole. You know, some of the ships, they don't have any cooling facility or any facility to plug any cooling, and then your product arrives in bad shape. So these are a number of things that we're working on at that level. I want to encourage you. You sound like somebody who's going to make it. You know how many persons, for instance, who farm can tell you exactly what is the cost of input per acre, the yield per acre, whether or not different growing methods can have higher yields or lower yields. When is it that you destroy a plant to put in new seedlings because you've reached the peak of its production? Some of us don't do that. As I said, in subsistence farming, you have a tree and you wait until the tree dies before you replace it. Well, I can see you're somebody who will put a tree in, and after 3 years, and it begins to. And the same thing in any other thing. I met some young people doing chicken and eggs, and they could tell me when that hen will reach its peak in production after how many months, a year and a half, and then they kill for meat and so on. And it means farm records. Farm records is a big issue. I know that not many people know how to keep farm records. Again, that's part of the training that's done through many of our member states at the national level. So there are a number of these pieces that have to be brought together in that regard. What we at CARICOM we're doing, again, is working with the ministries of agriculture, working with the agencies like IECA and CARDI and FAO in terms of recognizing and identifying the needs. We identified some, based on our interaction with the agriculture personnel in the various member states, we recognized there was need to get some money for agriculture. And we were able to raise from the European Union in excess of 15 million euros. We didn't have the money ourselves, but we were able to raise the money. And that money was put by and large through the FAO for the delivery of programs in the member states. So you may see FAO doing something in the member states, or you may, sorry, not FAO, IECA. You may see IECA doing something in the country, and you never wonder where the money came from. The CARICOM Secretariat is the one who negotiated with the money, and then we negotiated with IECA to allow them to deliver the program. So these are some of the skills that we have, some of where we bring to the table, so to speak, and recognizing that specialized institutions with experts can actually deliver. Joe, I don't know if I've touched all on the issues. Yeah, okay, I'm doing well.
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
You're keeping your bad straight.
But congratulations, you sound like somebody who's gonna do well. And do you work with other farmers, young people, to encourage them? Yeah. Great. Yeah. Yeah. What about the CAFAN network? Yeah. I mean, I have tremendous respect for the work that CAFAN is doing. And CAFAN is a body that, Jeffro, out of St. Vincent, we work with very closely with him. I mean, I know Jeffro personally. He comes to many of our events and functions, and he's a great advocate for agriculture. He's a great advocate for youth in agriculture. He's also a great advocate for women in agriculture. I notice we haven't spoken about women in agriculture. We also have a separate program on women in agriculture. Because, women produce a lot, whether by virtue of their own production or part of a family production. And sometimes we don't recognize that. So we do also have, working through CARDI and IECA, women in agriculture is another critical aspect of the work that we're doing. But I want to encourage you, and your own experiences, I think, can bring to bear on other young farmers as well. You know, what got you into it? I think you sound like somebody who would be a motivational speaker in agriculture among the youth. Seriously, I mean, I just listening to you, I can see that you have a passion in it and you are successful at it as well.
I have another question from St. Kitts, Joy Napier, the CARICOM Youth Ambassador for St. Kitts. Is CARICOM considering lobbying for various crop interests as a bloc similar to corn lobbies in the USA?
There was a time when we had a very strong, very strong lobby on bananas, as you know, and we still do some of that in sugar. Some of the work that we did in keeping the banana industry alive for as long as it is kept alive was in large measure through the collaboration and the single voice that we used, whether it was when we spoke to the Europeans themselves or when we went to the WTO, the World Trade Organization. We had a single voice in that. We do know what has happened to bananas. We just have not been able to compete more and more with the mega farms that exist in Central America. But yes, we do in fact identify. Only very recently, where we're working with the sugar industry. There's still life in sugar. It has not completely left us in some of our member states, and we are working with there's a Sugar Association of the Caribbean, SAC, that we work with. We give them the voice. They come through us, and we have to promote for them. But it's a never-ending battle. You're fighting large interests, large mega interests in other countries where wages they have the economies of scale, and the wages are very low, almost sub-living standards. And these are some of the competition we have. We've been lobbying against those countries that subsidize the agriculture heavily and want to export to us. It's a problem. If you're subsidizing your agriculture, subsidize it for yourself. Don't want to export it to us. We know some of that is happening, and we raise those issues as well. So yes, we do, sometimes on a crop basis, but more in terms of allowing for greater market access and dealing with issues of subsidies and whatnot.
Okay. Any questions, sir?
You can also ask questions other than agriculture and other than
education.
There's lots of other things that I think I mentioned to you that we do. Climate change. Yes, my friend. Sorry, I took your job, man.
I was just about to ask that question with climate change. Is CARICOM looking at policies or measures to protect the environment as in this era of climate change? What I'm specifically talking about, like zoning, for example. We have like residential lands and lands for development. And how do we save the lands and the environment for the next generation in terms of if you are going to use up a lot of agricultural land into building hotels and what have you, then and cutting when people are actually building, people don't really study the environment. Someone wants to build a building and they bulldoze the whole land and they're not planting back reforestation. So then are we going to wait until we reach a point like Haiti? Also, and if you want to address zero hunger, you have to be looking at those things.
Sure.
Control of the land usage.
Land use planning. Yeah. Both in terms of agriculture and the other areas.
So when you're building a house, you have to go to planning, for example. You have to get a plan passed.
Right.
But at the same time, how do we coordinate with the environment and the effect of when you are building? Can you save certain trees? Can you plant back certain trees so that you could reduce the impact of climate change and acid rain and all those stuff?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, these are things that are being looked at. I'm very much aware of it. The issue of, as you mentioned, indiscriminate clearing of land has become a problem in our region. In at least 2 or 3 of our countries, with the new climatic, the heavy rains that we get sometimes, and with flash flooding, what is being discovered is that persons are either clearing lands in the heights, felling trees, putting them in streams or felling them in streams. They dam the rivers, they dam the ravines. A heavy rain comes, and then in the valley and down the road, villages, bridges are washed away. And this is being addressed in terms of how you do that what is it, soil analysis, for instance, and I think you had asked a question about are we doing work on that. We encourage our agriculture planners to do that, do soil analysis, to ensure what areas are best suited for agriculture. Is that land, perhaps land that's not suited for agriculture, that you can produce, you can use for housing or some other things. But all of these areas we work with our, when the policies are being developed, the agriculture policies, again through the financing that we're able to get and provide to the member states or the technical assistance, the consultants, to look at that. Climate change is a very grave issue for us. We're experiencing climate change right now with the climatic events. If global warming continuing, you're going to see a shift in the crop patterns, in the seasons of our crops as well. I mean, already I experienced when I was a little boy in Dominica, when I used to be, mango is my favorite fruit. I can't see a mango tree. The times of year when you would get mangoes have shifted, for instance, because of the weather patterns and the rains and so on. And I'm sure as you get older, you recognize that in other crops as well. But Dr. Say, we have a program on sustainable development and environment that we're working on. And some of these issues are in fact having our attention. When we deal with climate change, we don't only talk about weather issues. We are networking with persons in agriculture, for instance. So CARI, working with our climate change center, the CARICOM Climate Change Center, is looking at the impact of climate change on agriculture. We're working with the fisheries people, because coral bleaching and so on and ocean warming will cause the kinds of fish that pass through waters to move on. We are talking about with the tourism people in terms of how they build tourism plan maybe too close to the shore that impacts the shoreline and those sort of things. So we look at it from a very holistic view going forward. And I'm being reminded that there used to be a time when we used to have in many of our countries, if not all, spatial plans, national spatial plans, in terms of where you zone. I don't know if we still do that, but we certainly have to encourage them.
All right, so again, traveling to St. Kitts, from, again, Joy Napier, CARICOM Youth Ambassador for St. Kitts. Will CARICOM be putting in place preferential purchasing arrangement for produce from other member states? And also, is there a CARICOM food security plan?
Well, the first answer about purchasing agreements, I don't think we're in that business. We will not be doing that. We encourage the marketing of produce between one country and another. But in terms of us putting a preferential purchasing, no, we're not doing that. The arrangements we have with the CARICOM external tariff allows you protection for your crops or your produce in another territory. So, for instance, agriculture normally attracts a tariff, an import duty of 30%. It means that any product coming from outside of the region is protected by that tariff. The imported goods should attract that tariff to make it that much more expensive. That is a preferential trading arrangement that we have, but it's not a purchasing arrangement. We do have a food and nutrition security plan in place, and remember, it's not just a food plan. The question was about food and nutrition, agriculture.
Food security.
Food security. We have a food and nutrition security because we recognize that it's not just about food security, it's about food and nutrition security, linking food with health. We all know that if we eat more of what we grow, we tend to live a healthier lifestyle instead of corn kernels and box juice and stuff like that. We can make our fresh juices and the like and live a healthier life. So we do have a regional food and nutrition security policy that is modular in terms of its implementation, and member states have been using it to develop their own national food and nutrition security plans and policies.
All right. To Belize, from Taryn Francis, CARICOM Youth Ambassador from Belize. There is no doubt that the Guyana rice issue took the news by storm here in Belize and also regionally. where a Belizean importer was denied the right at the port of entry in Belize to import Guyanese rice. How do things like this affect the idea of free trade within the region, as well as discourage the movement of goods, especially for those in agriculture?
I'm vaguely familiar with that case. I really don't have the full details to comment. I do know, I seem to recall that a couple of containers were refused entry. I'm not sure under what conditions. Let me just say to you that under the current trading arrangements we have in place within our community, once you meet the sanitary and phytosanitary import standards, you ought not to restrict the importation of any agricultural product or any goods that is manufactured in the region that meets what we call the rules of origin of CARICOM. You ought not to restrict. I am not commenting, Ambassador, I'm not commenting specifically on the Belizean case, because I said to you, I remember it vaguely. I don't remember the contention, the actual reason why the containers were halted. But it could not be on any reason. If it were on any reason other than meeting certain import sanitary standards, then it ought not to have happened that way. Guyana rice is sold throughout our region. It is good rice. I eat it just about every day in Guyana. I love rice, and I know many of us love rice and peas. But when these things happen, then that is where we come into play, in sense of trying to assist and facilitate the importing and exporting nations to arrive at some conclusion to this. I'm not aware that it has happened since. It was about 2 years ago, I think this happened. And I'm not aware it has happened since. But Guyana is exporting rice to Panama, for instance. They're exporting rice not just within CARICOM, but further afield. I happen to have met the president of Panama, who said that Guyana was the largest supplier of rice in Panama. There's such good rice. And they couldn't get enough of it, and the cost was excellent. So I wouldn't understand why any other country would want to prohibit the importation of Guyana rice.
All right. Any questions? Shakim?
Mm-hmm. Good afternoon. It should come on its own. Yeah.
Well, I have two questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the first one has to do with genetically modified organisms. And it is said that in the coming years that there will be an increase in the world's population of 9 billion people. And that has led to humans trying to increase the yielding ability of seeds and the growing speed of plants and animals. And what I would like to find out is, what is CARICOM doing in order to regulate the use of these seeds? Because I think this is with climate change and everything else, this is also a big red alert to humanity. And I think it can cause a lot of problems, like cancer and all these things. And my second question is, I've realized in my country that people are buying lands, right? They're buying lands and they're owning certain properties, and they're leaving the country to go to places like the UK and wherever. And what I've realized is those properties are important to development, such as in the cities, in Grenville and in St. George's. Certain buildings aren't being utilized because the owners aren't in the country and aren't interested in doing anything with it. So I'd like to find out what is being done to ensure that these properties or the lands are being utilized for producing things for the country. And that's my...
Okay. Let me try and deal with the last one first, because I think this again is not an issue that is a CARICOM issue. It's a national issue, and different countries have different ways of doing that. I am aware that at least one or two examples where, especially in the urban areas, where persons have imposed some sort of a levy or tax on lands in a village or town that is left idle, and there are derelict buildings on it that, on an eyesore and whatnot. I am aware that there are different methods being used in different jurisdictions, different countries to address that. There's always a debate about Owning land, it's an investment sometimes, many times an investment. And do you fetter the investment? Do you have the right to private property? So this is a debate, but I am aware that different countries approach it differently. As I mentioned, there may be a levy on undeveloped lands sometimes. The debate on the GMO, I got that question, interesting enough, when I met with the CARICOM youth ambassadors in Grenada, in Guyana last month. I will say to you that the debate on GMOs is ongoing. It is not axiomatic that anything that is done via GMO is bad. The science doesn't show that. It doesn't mean that everything that is done via GMO is good either. And we do know, for instance, there was an example of a genetically modified, I think it was corn seed, that basically began to cause havoc in the United States, and it was growing like a weed almost. And in CARICOM we got wind of it, and we put measures in place as a region. Each country had to do it collectively to ensure that seed stock coming from that particular state where it got out of hand was not allowed to be imported into our region. So when we know something in that regard, we will in fact act on it. But we do not now have any system of controlling the import of genetically modified foods on a whole, or genetically modified seeds or planting material. But we do know that there's that possibility. One scientist, and Dr. Slater is a scientist of sorts, Dr. Slater. He used to teach science in any event. One scientist, one agriculture scientist, explained GMO to me as such. He says, and it's a Caribbean person, by the way, who worked in one of the huge seed production plants in the Midwest of the United States. And they did work by natural selection of seeds, he explained to me, and some by genetically modified seeds. And he said to me that in controlled laboratory systems, they were able to show that the process is more or less the same, except that the GMO, you speed up the process. Instead of it happening over in the natural course of events of the biology of that seed or whatnot, 20 years of constant inbreeding, that you can in fact hasten it if you know the genetic makeup of the particular seed. Always you have to control it, because in anything that you do, you can have bad results. You know the debate about stem cells. It's not far removed from things GMO, for instance. And imagine science allowing you to grow a liver or a kidney in a laboratory so that you can make it a little more affordable and provide somebody with a little more life by having a kidney spawned from cells from his or her family. And you can save a life that way. So we have to recognize the good in science as well. I happen to be one that believes in science, but science can go wrong sometimes. But I believe in it, and we have to give it a chance. I read something last week which I could not imagine. And I think that's where I draw the line of science. They call it synthetic meat. Synthetic meat. There is some companies actually growing meat, just as you have tissue culture in plant material, growing meat in a laboratory, not in an animal. Well, I don't know if I could ever consume that, but that is science at work. I don't know if I could consume that. But certainly, to get back to your question, the one incident I remember since my experience at CARICOM, when we found out about that particular variety of corn, it had a number and everything, and we every member state of CARICOM was related to make sure that it never gets into our region, and we were successful.
Thank you, HD.
Amanda, do you have any questions?
So in keeping in the theme of education and agriculture, the future of CARICOM, there are some future lawyers that have a question for USG. It was reported by various media sources in Grenada last week and other parts of the region over the last month that ASIL, a student-based organization, has written to you, SG, and various leaders of CARICOM requesting that you address and a commit to address the issue of discrimination in legal education caused by the 1971 CARICOM Treaty. Now, the question from that is, in light of the CARICOM Human Resources Development Strategy 2030, carded for discussion at the upcoming heads of government here in Grenada, do you see this issue as an important concern requiring a contemporary response from CARICOM? If so, what position is likely to be taken? And if not, why do you not see it as an issue requiring attention?
Okay. Interesting enough, at a press conference this morning, I got that question, so I'm ready for the answer. No, I have not seen the letter from ACIL. I'm not saying they have not written to me. I have not seen the letter from ACIL, but I am very much aware of the issue that you speak about. Currently, the situation we have is that graduates from UE have automatic entry to the law schools, whether it's Wooding, I forget the names of the one in Jamaica, Norman Manley, and the one Eugene in the Bahamas. They have automatic right of entry. And we do recognize that that is a challenge and a problem for persons who are studying law in law faculties in national universities, both in Jamaica. There's another one in Jamaica. I think it's the former CAST. It's now called, what is it? University of Technology is offering it, and New Tech in Trinidad and Tobago. The one in Trinidad and Tobago is also offering UTT. UTT is also offering law, and then of course we have our students out of the University of Guyana and University of Belize, who do not have access as of right into the law schools. It is of concern. It is definitely of concern. It is something that our heads of government have discussed a few times, to the extent where the letters have been written to the Council on Legal Education to seek to address it. We have I'm very much aware that the Council on Legal Education, which is the body that runs and manages the 3 law schools in Trinidad, Jamaica, and the Bahamas, have commissioned a quote-unquote study to look at the issue. The issue is not a simple one of saying you are admitted. There is a problem with space. The law schools, particularly the one in Trinidad and Tobago, I understand is busting at the seams in that it was created to accommodate half of the students it's currently accommodating. I have received advice that the policy, the admission policy of the Council for Legal Education in giving priority to UE students is discriminatory and ought to be addressed. I'll put it at that level, that I have received that advice. But we're awaiting this study because it's a complex issue that requires a multifaceted approach. So the matter is being looked at. I want to assure the person who asked the question on ACIL. When I do get the letter from ACIL, it probably came while I was in transit here. I've been on the road for quite a bit. I certainly will be responding in kind. The study that was prepared by the Council of Education will be coming to the Legal Affairs Committee. The Legal Affairs Committee of CARICOM is the body of attorneys general who generally have oversight on legal matters. We'll be looking at it with the intention of making very specific recommendations to the Conference of Heads of Government. So it will not be discussed at this meeting, but I'm hoping that it will be discussed at the February meeting. Once we get the study, we'll be able to review it. We'll present it to the Heads of Government.
All right.
Thank you, Ashi. My personal question to you.
Sure.
Education and agriculture, they are gateway pillars for development. Education, we unlock our human potential, and agriculture, it sustains it. So my question to you, SG, have CARICOM thought about exploring other options of economic prosperity, regional economic prosperity, with regards to repatriation? As a collective voice, and not just one country, but a collective voice from CARICOM, we explore repatriation as a boost or to economic prosperity.
Repatriation, encouraging our nationals to come back home? What do you mean by repatriation?
Repatriation, encouraging our nationals to come back.
I'm one of those. I came back home, having migrated and went to study. I know that as CARICOM, we don't have a policy, but again, we, in our interaction with the various diaspora groups, which we do have from time to time, and particularly in North America, I guess because it's easier for us to access those groups in North America, we do encourage greater interaction. It doesn't necessarily have to be coming back home, repatriation as you put it, but investing in our community. What are some of the financial tools, financial instruments we could have? I've heard persons speak about diaspora bonds, for instance, and other mechanisms to try to have persons from the diaspora skills. We have so many CARICOM nationals excelling in various private sector organizations throughout North America, throughout the world, as a matter of fact, and how they can contribute. And we do, in fact, encourage that. There is greater such activity taking place at national levels. Many of our member states do, in fact, have departments that deal with the diaspora in North America and the United Kingdom. And we also see them as a voice in their new homes, in their adopted homes, on our behalf. So they have a role to play even while they are in those countries. They are voters, they vote. And if policies of a particular party in North America is inimical to our interests, they have a voice to raise. So they do have a role to play in our development, not only in terms of being back in the region, but also from where they are. And I do on an annual basis. I know UE has an alumni group of CARICOM persons who studied at UE who are in Canada and who are in North America. I'm not sure they have one in Leonard in the UK though. UE is the group of the. But certainly, every year I'm invited to send a message to them to encourage them to keep on contributing to our region development by way of skills or other means investing. And so only last month I did a message for the diaspora in Canada, encourage them to invest, to visit, to buy our foods as well. There's a niche market in many of these countries for our foods. I know of, again, I always use those examples of a young fellow who happens to eventually got married to a member of my family living in Canada he began importing food products from St. Vincent. He started not from Dominica, but from St. Vincent. He's a Dominican, but he saw a market opportunity to bring in breadfruit from St. Vincent, for instance. And that expanded to the extent where he's bringing in food products from Jamaica, from several islands, and supplying the West Indian community in the Toronto area. So we encourage them to do that as well. So we do have those interactions.
Actually, I have also a personal question. As it relates to technology, as we move into, as we know, we are a global space, and as we continue to advance in terms of technology, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and we're moving into drones, are we seeing the importance of science, technology, engineering, math to be taught not only at the secondary or the tertiary level, but also at the primary level, so that we're going to have children, students growing up in the digital age, understanding computer science from a very, very early age?
The short answer is yes. In our HR strategy, we deliberately had an expert on IT be part of that to ensure that we address the very issues that you mentioned. And we have gone beyond STEM to STEAM. Science, technology, English, the arts, which includes culture, of course, which is very, very important for us, and mathematics. And not only the learning of these, but the teaching of it. How do we teach to get the results that we want? So the answer is yes, we see the importance of it. And the ICT strategy that we already have adopted, will be a companion piece to the HR strategy that we have going forward. I have heard the term, not many people like that term, but I've heard it in IT circles, and you sound like someone in that circle, where they say about digital natives, turning our people into digital natives, which means that it is second nature for you to be using the technology in every aspect of your life, from primary right up to old age. going forward. I don't know, Dr. Seta, if I've answered that one. You think so? You have anything you want?
In the Human Resource Development Strategy, we permit a seamless transition in the development of all, from the basic education right up to post-tertiary education, that the whole issue of technology should be an integral part of it. So we have that covered.
Excellent.
All right, want to open the floor again? We have a question in the back.
President, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, I'm sorry.
My
Good
name
evening.
is Dalton Charles, representing Kalinago Farms from La Poutrie, St. Andrews.
Kalinago?
Yeah, Kalinago Farms.
Nice.
Agriculture / archaeology.
Oh.
My main concern, I would like to know from your secretariat, what are you doing in terms of science for agriculture as it relates to seed? Now, I'm involved in vegetable crops just as the gentleman here. And we do, vine crops is one of my specialties.
Vine
crops.
Vine, yes.
And seeds is being protected by the producer of seeds. They have suicidal genes, they have all the different components that protects the seed. So a farmer, for instance, may plant watermelon. To commercially viable, you need to plant more than 2,000 stools of watermelon based on the cost of production. It involves irrigation. You have to irrigate for over 3 months. The cost of gasoline, the cost of fertilizer. You have to have a preventative method. So you have to use a chemical that is prescribed.
I'm destroying a thing there.
So you have to use the chemicals that go in line in that preventative method in terms of pests and diseases. Why, for thousands of years, some of those exact crops was grown and developed that resistance against all those pesticides and all those pests and all those diseases. How would CARICOM now look at that problem farmers having? Because a farmer would plant watermelon, and after 3 months, and start harvesting, the whole crop is affected with disease that was not even protected by the same chemicals that was prescribed to protect it. How research, the Secretariat is doing research to help farmers curb this problem? Because the new cost have farmers bankrupt, and the commercial entities does not finance capital for farmers in the region, Grenada as a whole. So how farmers now would come from that hole? What are you doing to protect seeds in the region? What are you doing to help research and development for seeds for the young farmers in the Caribbean?
Okay. CARDI, are you familiar with CARDI? Yes, CARDI has an office here. CARDI is the CARICOM agency, the institution for the development, research and development of agriculture. And I am aware that they are involved in propagating planting material that are probably indigenous to our region. They do research based on the demands of the member state. So I am familiar, and my familiarity is limited. And Joe, if you can augment, I'll be happy on this. I saw the CARDI farm. I call it a farm, but that's the growing facility in Belize, for instance, and they were producing a number of crops that would have been unique and answering certain challenges that Belize had. One of it was I'm just giving an example. One of it was a grass for livestock that cut down the cost of production because it grew profusely, high nutrient value, and they were doing all of that kind of research. That was the request, and they were also doing something on seasoning peppers and another variety of crop. That was the request that was made of the government of Belize Ministry of Agriculture on that particular crop. I know also these crops. I know also that they were doing in which country? Another country, diseases in certain varieties of yam. That was the request. What I'm pointing to you is that they do research based on the requests of the countries that they're in. It comes based on the discussions with the Ministry of Agriculture, that is their counterpart. And in different countries, they do different research. And what happens is that the research in one country, if it's applicable to another country, if it's solving that particular problem, the technology or the results are utilized and transferred. So seasoning pepper technology and whatnot was brought from such a farm, a plot, a cardi plot out of another country into Belize to help them propagate that. And their own indigenous grass that was researched for the nutrient value for the livestock, given the results, that will be transferred to another. So that's the institution that we have that deals with those issues, and it is responsive to the mandate is that you can't just do research for research purposes, only for research. It must solve a particular problem. So if some years ago there was some research in conjunction with the UE Center, the campus in Trinidad and Tobago, we had a disease that was decimating our anthurium plants throughout CARICOM. These lovely anthurium plants, and they'll have holes and they'll be torn and so on. And UE began to do research on what was the issue that was causing that. Some years ago, you may remember, we had the pink millibug throughout our region, decimating our tree crops. And again, CARDI and UE partnered and recognized that there was a natural predator that could have. So we do those kind of things in response to the particular demand. I am not aware, if you're saying that you have a particular disease affecting your melons, your vine crops, you have you brought it to your extension officer. I would bring it to their attention, see how widespread it is, see what can be done about it. And then if it is that CARDI can assist, I certainly would I can talk to the CARDI people in the headquarters and see there's something that they can do. I know that work is also being done through that, both again through FAO, IECA, and CARDI combined on black sigatoka, another disease that's messing up our bananas and plantains throughout the region. So we do respond, given the limitations of our resources when the demands are made. But on the melons, I certainly will carry that back to the CARDI office in Trinidad to see if they're doing anything on it.
And also, we have a problem with the hot peppers. Years ago, we exported a lot of hot peppers, and in the northeast, I don't know, sure, Grenada, if we have that problem, but in the northeast, St. Andrews area, there is that flower moth, and CARDI do provide planting materials, but the flower moth has practically destroyed the hot pepper industry.
Is that a white, the flower moth? Is it just
the
tiny?
Flower moth, because there is outside hosts other than the pepper. Farmers are having a lot of problem with controlling the flower moth.
I see.
There are traps, there are different chemicals that may control it, but they have that problem, and as a result, the whole pepper industry here has been affected.
It's messed up. So you said that they provide. Are they aware? This is.
I think they are aware because they do help with the
planting material.
Not only the planting material, some of the traps like the sticker traps.
I see.
Yeah. But then more research is also needed in terms of controlling the flower moth.
You never had that problem before with those moths? Is this something new, relatively new?
No, I mean, that is over a few years now. The flower moth is affecting the hot peppers. As a result, the production and the export, we had a large export market for hot peppers in Grenada.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to take two more questions here, and I have two more questions to ask from our regional friends. So 4 more questions, and then we will close. I see my friend has his hand up.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I just wanted to get if you all have any emphasis on organic farming, pure organic farming.
Again, these are all national programs. Again, we recognize the value. There's a niche market for organic farming. The member states, some member states, I don't know what you have in Grenada, I'm not familiar, but I am aware that some member states do have certain units that are looking at with farmers on organic farming. For instance, before you can call your product an organic product, it has to be certified, as you know, ideally 7 years, and pesticide runoff and all that kind of things. So that is being done. But in terms of a program at the CARICOM Secretariat, no. But it is part of our overall the CARICOM agriculture plan that recognizes that organic farming is a niche farming product that could fetch a higher price, particularly in the health food industry. It does fetch a higher price, but you're into organic farming, and I'm sure you know that sometimes the cost of organic farming can be a little higher because you can't use your chemicals to control your pests, as the colleague mentioned, and you cannot use chemical fertilizers and the like. So sometimes your cost of production is higher, but usually if you have a market for it, then it should fetch a better price.
Also, as I say, the cost of production can be high, but over the years, right, I come up with ways and means to control, different pests, parasites, and also into stock banking my own seeds. So there's a lot of seeds that persons may have to input, right? Mm-hmm. That I have, and I have it from way back, right?
I see.
And next thing to, when coming for the sustainability, right? It's a bit easier for me on my part because most of the stuff I get is from the wild, right? And there's a lot of stuff here that if you look at on the back of the carbon chemicals list, the persons read it, they can see that most of the stuff is been taken from the wild and they've been putting into these chemicals and we've been using. You understand? So what I do over the years, I did a lot of research, right? And today, I'm doing organic farming. I'm doing fairly okay, and I don't really have a problem except that the amount, right? I produce a good amount, but the amount that some persons may demand or companies or who may demand.
You need to expand.
I need to expand.
Yeah. Well, you're a model. I want to congratulate you on that, and I think it shows what I tried to say. You're actually demonstrating that you can, in fact, make a good business out of it if you approach it the way you have, and it does in fact fetch a higher price for what is considered to be health foods. Do you sell seedlings? You say you have a seed bank. You sell seedlings, organic seedlings. That in itself is a market. If you can produce organic seedlings to somebody, it can help them get started in it and encourage it. Yeah, congratulations.
Always.
Joe?
A question from Joy again. Can CARICOM mandate for youth representatives to sit on all major education-related decision-making committees? Example, UWI, CXC, etc.
No, we couldn't mandate that. We just don't have the authority or the power to do that. We certainly, what I can say to you is, as the Secretary General of the Caribbean Community, and certainly while I'm there, I make every effort to involve youth in every opportunity that I have a decision to make, and my colleagues, Dr. Slater and Dr. Brown, of like mind on that. I mentioned to you the work that we're doing in agriculture and youth, and the youth input into that. We have special programs, and Mr. Cox, ASG Cox is the department. So once we had youth represented on the Human Resource Commission when we were doing the IT strategy. I remember actually there was a consultation throughout the region. I went to 2 countries, one of which was Grenada, and we did have a special session just with youth in terms of input into the IT strategy for the community. So whenever it's something that we are doing, you rest assured that youth input will be there once it's available for whatever we're doing. Okay. Even sometimes we do something as simple as we were upgrading our CARICOM website, and I asked for the CYA to critique what we had done or what we had to make it more user-friendly. And your colleagues volunteered a few years ago. So anything I can do to involve the youth in what I'm doing, because you guys have fantastic ideas. What we're doing here today, as I said to you, is your ideas. It's the CYA who came up with this social media interaction. Some of them are not youth anymore, but I still keep in touch with them because, they allowed me not only to sit in a room like this and talk to you, but to reach youth throughout the region. And persons who may not have an opportunity to interact and speak with the Secretary General. You have that opportunity, and it's your idea. I'm only your guest here. It's your idea. This is your thing. And I'll come back, no matter how difficult your questions are. I'll keep coming back once you invite me to keep coming back.
All right, so we will, well, we have one more question, and that's the final question. Well, I see two hands went up.
Good evening, everybody. So I sat here just monitoring everything that's going on, and this gentleman across here made a critical question. He asked a critical question, and I didn't quite think that it was answered properly. He asked, what are the things that we can do to get youths more involved in the agricultural sector? Coming from the system which I termed as secondary and tertiary education, I strongly believe that the educational system taboo agricultural science, and in order to answer his question and to remedy it in a strong way, we need to bring back the importance of agriculture to our young people. We need to instill that agriculture is production, and we need to address it in order to address any other issue. So I believe, to answer his question, I strongly believe that the educational system needs to be addressed and needs to bring back the importance in agricultural science.
All right, great.
Thank you very much.
All right, so I think we end on a wonderful note. So also, we will be doing the CARICOM song. It will be played shortly, and also there are pins and flyer at the back. So after we conclude, you can collect pins and flyer at the back. And the refreshments, what happened to the refreshments, Johnny? Oh, you have it in a bag?
That bag.
And yeah, the refreshments is available. All right, so CARICOM song?
Well, the song is the last thing? Kendall, can I say something before you play your song? Play the song?
Hold on,
I just wanted to say thank you. I don't think we could just end so abruptly. I want to thank the comment made by our sister there on the response. You see, you're much more capable. I can't see her. You're much more capable of answering, and that's why I said to you that I'm also here to not only receive your questions, but to receive your ideas as well. And I always find it very refreshing when I have interactions and I get ideas. I don't forget them. I may not act on them right away, but I take them away with me. Yes, indeed. And the notion of food production, I think sometimes we minimize the importance of agriculture by saying it's agriculture, not recognizing that we are feeding people. We're into food production. We're into providing nutrition for our people. And I think you're quite right that we have to make the curriculum a lot more responsive. Let me say thank you to our two wonderful ambassadors, our host and hostess for this session. Let me also say thank you to the other colleague ambassadors who called from or sent in their messages from across the community. I do know that they're all listening and taking part in it. And I also know that they're all involved in relaying as well to ensure that they have a huge number of you out there taking part in this. I have enjoyed this as I normally do. I always learn from you, and I want to say thank you. I need your support. We cannot do it by ourselves. CARICOM is not about what's in Georgetown or the Secretariat of the SG. CARICOM is about all of us doing what we're doing. The more you speak about CARICOM, the more you ask about CARICOM, not only to me or of me, but in your respective communities, of your community leaders, of your governments, of your PAL reps, the more they see that you are interested in CARICOM, is the more responsive we will all be to what we're trying to do, namely building a community for all. So thank you very much. I'll be here with you hanging out a little longer. So feel free to let's have a chat. If you didn't get a chance to ask your question, I'll be here for another 15, 20 minutes with you. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Shiris will, on behalf of the CARICOM Youth Ambassador Committee and the CARICOM Youth Ambassadors, Shiris, who is a law student at the K-Vale campus, will do the vote of thanks.
Sure.
Today, gathered in this room, three very crucial aspects of CARICOM were brought forward: youth, education, and agriculture. These three aspects are indispensable to the development of CARICOM, and thus we must say thank you to the organizers of this event. Firstly, we must thank the Secretary General of CARICOM, Mr. Aaron LaRoe, for taking time out of his busy schedule to facilitate this evening's discussion. Secondly, mention must be made to the persons who assisted in this evening's proceedings. Our chairman, Mr. Judd Cadet, Ms. Kada Joseph for her beautiful rendition of our national anthem, Miss Amanda Scott for her hospitable welcome, and to you, the engaging audience. Thirdly, it would be remiss of us not to thank the Ministry of Youth in Grenada and Dr. Brown at the CARICOM Secretariat's office for their assistance in this evening's proceedings. Lastly, I'd like to thank the Radisson for accommodating us here this evening. Thank you, everyone.
This is one anthem you can dance to.
From many distant lands, our forefathers came, some seeking adventure, some bound in chains. Through battles waged and fought, through victory and pain, by test of their courage, our freedom was gained. In homage to those gone before us, the heroes of lands in the sun, we vow to join hands and to focus on building one Caribbean. Raise your voices high, sing of your Caribbean pride. Sing it loud and strong, till our hearts beat as one. Celebrating song as we rise to heights where we belong. Sound the victory drum for CARICOM. The great and diverse be our ethnicities. The bonds that unite us are stronger than these. We dine, we pray, we love, we dance and we play. We relate to each other the West Indian way. Today, as a people united, determined and steadfast we stand. We look to a brand new horizon, the future now firmly in our hands. Raise your voices high and sing of your Caribbean pride. Sing it loud and strong, till our hearts beat as one. Celebrating song as we rise to heights where we belong. Sound the victory drum for CARICOM. Hele, hele, bravo. Open you sing CARICOM. Leve, leve, wow. Knock you drum CARICOM. Tabu, yeah, tabu, wow. Open you sing CARICOM. Leve, leve, wow. Raise your voice.